When you shoot an arrow, the reason it falls to the ground is because it seeks to come to rest and stay still. Augustine draws on that analogy to explain our lives. We have a proper place in relationship to God, a place where we can rest. But when we abandon God, when we look for pleasure, truth, and beauty in the world instead of in God, it is like pouring water and oil together and shaking them up. We will perpetually be on the move until we find the proper place where we belong. Only then can we rest. So the world, disordered, is like the chaos of water and oil that have been mixed up. Everything is in motion. Everything is moving. And we are unable to stop looking, stop moving, until we come back to the place to which we belong. And then we find rest. But what is it that brings us up or down in the hierarchy of being? What is it that moves us to God or pulls us down to the lower order of things? It is our love. Love is the weight by which He moves, he says. To whatever place I go, I am drawn to it by love. We have to love. We are created to love. We are created to love God and find our fulfillment in God. And only an infinite object of love, God, can satisfy us. When we turn from God, when we let go of God, we sink down to the lower levels, to the levels below us. And the result is now in our love, we attach it to people, to jobs, to ambitions, to pleasures that we can get in this life. And the result is that we are dissatisfied, uneasy, torn apart, he says. We are confused. So we must return to God. And we do that by learning to love God again. That, for Augustine, requires grace. How do we find God? How do we know God? We now have some idea of his understanding of reality. What is real? What is fully real is God. The world is real, but not fully real. It is good, but not fully good. It is beautiful, but not fully beautiful. Indeed, it's the beauty of the world that is so dangerous, because our souls, attracted by this beauty, will seek to gratify itself by latching on to material things, to things below us. We have an idea now of how we ought to live. Created to praise God, we must learn to love God again. We must abandon the attachments that we have to people and to things in this world. We must stop looking to this world to satisfy us. And like the servants who were the emperor's friends, we must abandon those ambitions and seek to be friends with God. How do we do this? Where do we find God? Augustine says we do not find God in this world. Let's go back to Book 7 again. I'm going to draw your attention to a couple of passages here. Let's say a few words about sort of the relative nature of this world compared to God. Look at the last line of chapter 13. This is what he had come to discover by reading the books of the Platonists. I had come to see that that though the higher things are better than the lower, the sum of all creation is better than the higher things alone. We are better than animals. Animals are better than plants. Plants are better than material things. He has a hierarchy of value. Let's go to the next page, page 150. Chapter 15. I looked at other things too and saw that they owe their being to you. I saw that all finite things are in you, not as though you were a place that contained them, but in a different manner. They are in you because you hold all things in your truth, as though they were in your hand. And all things are true insofar as they have being. There are levels of truth that correspond to levels of being. Falsehood is nothing but the supposed existence of something which has no being. Chapter 16. He wants to look at the created order. He says, in a sense, in the same way, the wicked find your justice disagreeable, just as they find vipers and worms unpleasant. Yet these animals were created good by you. They were created to suit the lower order of your creation. Thus the wicked themselves are suited to this lower order, inasmuch as they are unlike you, whereas they are suited to the higher order insofar as they become more like you. Less like God, more like God. Humans are more like God than animals because we have reason. Animals are more like God than plants, and so on. The evil, the wicked, he says, the wicked people, they become less like God because of the sin. And the objective now is to become more like God, to be raised back up to our appropriate place in the hierarchy of reality. How do we do that? Chapter 17 gives us an idea. In the middle of the page, he's reflecting on how it was that he's able to judge. And I realized that above my own mind, which was liable to change, there was the never-changing true eternity of truth. So step by step, my thoughts moved on from the consideration of material things to the soul, which perceives things through the senses of the body, and then to the soul's inner power, to which the bodily senses communicate external facts. Beyond this, dumb animals cannot go. The next stage is the power of reason, to which the facts communicated by the bodily senses are submitted for judgment. This power of reason led me on to consider the source of its own understanding. It withdrew my thoughts from their normal course and drew me back from the confusion of images which pressed upon it, so that it might discover what light it was that had been shed upon it when it proclaimed for certain that it was immutable. The immutable was better than that which was not. And finally he says, and so in an instant of awe, my mind attained to the sight of the God who is. What has he done here? Notice the sequence that he's taken. He begins by talking about the material things, and then he goes into the soul, and he starts rising through the levels of soul. He comes to the sensible, but their animals can't go any further. And he goes beyond that, and he finally finds something above him, that which is truly real, the truth, that which is God, he who is.